Marvel Studios' own Kevin Feige has been making the rounds hyping up Avengers Endgame. He now wants to talk about the fact that it's, 3 hours long, and he says that's the least interesting and not interesting part of the film. Obviously, coming in at 3 hours, you're like, okay, that's kind of big. That's actually huge. That's like monumental. That's unheard of for this type of movie. But naturally, Disney granted it to Marvel Studios. Kevin Feige was happy. The Russos were happy, and we're gonna get this giant epic conclusion to 11 years. Kevin was specifically asked about that aspect of it, like, the interesting story behind it, how it happened, and what the movie is about. And people have been asking him about this, honestly, a lot during the interviews. People want to know why it's 3 hours. And he just outright came out and said, look, that's the least interesting part of the movie. That's actually not interesting at all. And you have to understand what he's saying here. And I've seen some people twist his words. Oh, he's saying Avengers isn't interesting in 3 hours. No, he's saying that the 3 hours that they have isn't interesting because it doesn't matter how much time they got. They were able to tell a very coherent story with Avengers Infinity War. Endgame allows them even more time to be able to tell the story they need. Of course that's not interesting because who cares? Thor Ragnarok is on the shorter side, but they tell a complete story. Same with Ant-Man and the Wasp. The time you have isn't interesting and important because you have to utilize the time you have. And honestly, I agree with him. Sure, 3 hours is great. Would the Russos have been able to tell the same story at 2.5? Probably not. They would have had to cut out a few parts like they did for Age of Ultron with Joss Whedon. But ultimately, that is not interesting, right? He's right about this. There's nothing interesting about a 3 hour runtime. It's what's in those 3 hours that's the interesting part. So twisting his words saying that Endgame isn't interesting at 3 hours, you know exactly what you're doing.